This weekend, another funeral in Buffalo for a victim of last week's mass shooting. Family and friends laid to rest Roberta Drury, the youngest of the 10 victims killed in the attack. The 32-year-old grew up in the Syracuse area, moved to Buffalo a decade ago to care for her brother who suffered with leukemia. It has only been 1 week, but the psychological damage that this massacre has inflicted upon its survivors and the community at large is clear. A new Washington Post poll found that 3/4 of Black adults are worried they or someone they love will be attacked because of the color of their skin. With me now is MSNBC political analyst and New York Times columnist Charles Blow. Charles, thanks for joining us on this. I just want to get your reaction first and foremost to those numbers I just put out there.
Yes, I mean, I think people respond to crisis and terrorism in this way where they feel a heightened sense of vulnerability to it. I think there is an ambient sense of threat that Black people feel in the country always. It is pushed to the fore when something happens that negatively affects Black people, like this terrorist attack, this massacre in Buffalo. And I think that what we have to do is to understand that there are multiple threats operational in the minds of Black people. One is a threat from the state itself in the form of police killings. Another is a state of group terroristic activity. And the other is a threat of vigilante white nationalists, which is the case here. One thing that we don't often recall is that the Black Lives Matter movement sprang out of an act of vigilante killing rather than state killing. It was the acquittal of George Floyd that saw the birth of the hashtag Black Lives Matter, not George Floyd, George Zimmerman that saw the birth of the hashtag Black Lives Matter. So those three levels of threat are always operational for Black people in this country, and we need to deal with each one of them. Though they are related, they are separate things, and we need to deal with each one of them individually.
I want to play for you some of an interview that I did yesterday with India Walton. She ran for mayor in Buffalo, did not win. She is a Buffalo activist as well. She talks about historically how Buffalo has remained a segregated city and some of the issues they face going forward. And then we'll talk on the other side.
Not only is Buffalo the sixth most segregated city in the nation, the third poorest of its size, but we've had multiple government officials who have been blatantly racist. We had a county sheriff who's responsible for more than 30 deaths under his watch in full uniform at a white supremacist rally with the Confederate flag hanging behind him. So the fact that this person was from outside of the area does not mean that Buffalo and Western New York are absolved from white supremacy and racism in our own city.
You know, I think since this shooting took place, I've been trying to get to the root of this question, which is, so how do you change things? How do you change things in a city like Buffalo specifically that is so incredibly segregated, in which it seems as if they're not even willing to put the resources that they need into these Black communities in order to thrive, to make them feel as if they matter, to bridge that gap, especially when India Walton paints the picture that she does of Buffalo right now?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is start by acknowledging that the narrative we have around white supremacist violence in the modern age is largely mythological and based on an historical white supremacist violence, right? We still in this country think about white supremacist violence as emanating from the Klan, emanating from the South. When you look at the places that have the highest percentage of segregation, metropolitan areas, Southern cities barely even show up on those lists. It is places like Buffalo, it is places like Minneapolis, it is places like New York City and Chicago. And once we understand that the topography of this white terrorism has shifted with, in fact, the segregation of people from largely southern cities into northern and western cities that call themselves liberal, then we can actually start to deal with what that means. And I don't think we can even talk about it until we acknowledge that.
You address the possibility of change or the lack thereof in this incredibly beautiful op-ed, Charles. And I want to read a part of it for folks to hear what you have to say about that on the 2-year anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. And you write this: I have learned not to expect much from America. It has a deep capacity for change, but a shallow desire for it. I have embraced the wise desire not to be betrayed by too much hoping, as James Baldwin put it. But I worry about young people in all of this. It is their faith that is most vulnerable to damage. They were the ones who most believed that change was not only possible, but imminent, only to have America retreat and retrench. There is not much hope in that piece, Charles. And talk to me about your worry for the younger generation.
Yeah, well, in generally speaking, and I've written about this before, as a spiritual concept, I think hope is important. It keeps you from falling into despair. As a political concept, it is futile, it is not useful, and in fact, hope is often aimed at Black people because they lack power. And they say, well, maybe the powers that be will change if things just line up, and if you hope well enough, and you wish well enough, and you pray hard enough. What I say in the piece as well is that I have learned that it is really about power. Who has it, who can exercise it, who it benefits, and who it harms. And we do have to shift our thinking about what really will transform America away from people's feelings, individual evolutions and transformations, and focus specifically and almost exclusively on the issue of power and whether or not we are giving people access to power. What we are doing at the moment is pulling back and giving people less power. We see that in voter suppression efforts that have sprung up and spread all around the country. That is where it is most important. And Martin Luther King once said, I know people say that, quote Martin Luther King all the time, but he said something that I thought was really revelatory in the latter part of his life, which was, the law may not be able to make someone love me, but it can stop them from lynching me. That is what power is like. It is the power of legislation. And it doesn't care about how you feel about me.
Power of legislation. And the power of representation in creating that legislation to represent the people that matter and that need that change. Charles Blow, as always, thank you. I could talk to you about this for hours, but we don't have the time. I hope you do come back as we continue this conversation and do not let it go away, as we often have in this news cycle. Thank you, Charles.